This episode of the Device Talks Weekly podcast is brought to you by Device Talks Tuesdays, a weekly virtual series of important medtech conversations. We have a full slate coming up in May, discussions led by Master Control, iMark, and Intertech. For more information and to register, go to devicetalks.com. All right, you ready for this?
Ready.
Hey everyone, Tom Salemi here, Editorial Director of Device Talks. Welcome back to the Device Talks Weekly Podcast, or if this is your first time listening, welcome. Great to have you. Before we get into this week's episode, I want to remind you that we've launched a new podcast that's called Medtronic Talks, and you'll be able to find that on all podcast channels, as well as on our devicetalks.com website, where you can find our Device Talks Weekly Podcast. Go to Apple, Amazon, and Google, subscribe to the Medtronic Talks podcast. We'll be putting out at least 2 of those a month. We'll be talking with senior leaders at Medtronic about the many business units and about many other important issues and challenges and opportunities that Medtronic is taking on. So again, go to Apple Podcasts, Google, Amazon, Spotify, you name it. Subscribe to Medtronic Talks. And while you're there, if you haven't already subscribed to Device Talks Weekly, we have a couple of great interviews for you this week. We're going to open up with an interview I did with Eric Honroth. He is the president of Getinge North America. We talked about Getinge's recent approval for their ventilator lines, what it means for folks needing these devices. And of course, there are too many. COVID-19 may be waning in the US, we hope so, and in other parts of the world, but we're obviously seeing great troubles in India and elsewhere. So Eric Honroth is going to bring us up to date on what Getinge is producing in the ventilator space. We'll talk about some other issues facing the company as well, including its new policy on virtual working from home. Later on, we'll run a great interview I did with Nadine Hachach-Haram. She is the president, CEO, and founder of Proximie, which is a terrific company that's bringing digital connection to the OR. It's enabling surgeons to assist other surgeons across many miles and across continents. Dr. Hachach-Haram is a surgeon herself. She got into surgery to open up access to healthcare. And her crossover into technology has just amplified that desire. So she's a great guest with great stories, and very, very happy to have her on the show. Now, without any further delay, I want to bring in my co-host, Chris Newmarker, the executive editor of Life Sciences at Mass Device. Chris Newmarker, how are you, sir?
Good to be here, Tom. Doing well, man. Doing
Great.
well.
Look what I wore for you, Chris. Look at the shirt I got on. This is for you, baby. You're the Flash. You're blazing fast. Not Flash Gordon.
One of us. No.
Not Flash Gordon. Flash the superhero.
Oh,
Flash.
yeah, that guy too. Yeah.
Dear
Sorry.
God, man. You're going super fast. You're not fighting Ming the Merciless. You're having a busy week. What are you up to, Chris? Why are you don't?
Oh, we don't mind, but that goatee that you got has a Ming look every once in a while. Like, today you're good. You shaved it down. You're doing well, man. But yeah.
That's a fair point. I did shave the Ming cut, which still appears in some of our merchandising literature. Like, can we not use that anymore? That was a dark time in my life.
And after we like grow Device Talks Weekly podcast to our point, the next goal is to conquer the universe, right? Yeah, it'd be awesome.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's in the business plan.
Universal conquest.
Yeah. Huge money in that. Huge money. So tell me about your week. Pharma 50. Tell our listeners what you're doing.
Yeah, we're me and our pharma editor Brian Bunce. We are in the thick of it and gathering data on the world's largest pharmaceutical companies. So if people follow Mass Device and Medical Design Outsourcing enough, you'd know that we do our Big 100 feature every year that looks at the largest medical device companies in the world. Our senior editor, Daniel Kirsch, just like rocks that thing. We're going to be doing something like that on our pharmaceutical sites, drug discovery and development, as well as the pharmaceutical processing world. So yeah, keep an eye out for it. It's in the works. We'll
very cool.
Giving everybody a little teaser on it.
Very cool. And I also wore this shirt because I watched the Zack Snyder Justice League cut.
Oh, wow.
Last weekend.
How was it?
It was long, Chris. I'll take care of that word there, but it's very long. But I was inspired. I think this should be the longest podcast. I want a 4-hour and 3-minute podcast. So could you do top 50 this week on New Market Newsmakers? I know you're busy, but is that possible?
No.
Or should we just stick to 5?
No.
We'll just
How
do
about
5.
that? I'm making an executive decision. I'm an executive editor. No.
I'm an idea man. I can only throw them out, see what sticks to the wall. All right, we'll
it's
stick
always
with.
Good. Always going to throw out an idea, man. It's always good. I appreciate the input, Tom.
He really seems to appreciate my input. Such a good editor.
Here you go, man.
Well, let's start with number 5 on the New Markets Newsmakers list.
Well, number 5 was from Brian Bunce. Originally ran on drug discovery and development. It's about this is a tad spooky. They were scientists, just a little spooky. They were scientists from the U.S. and China that injected some human stem cells into monkey embryos and created a human monkey hybrid that they're saying like, hey, we could test new drugs on this, like there's promise for organ transplants, whatever. But let's just say that there's some ethical problems behind what they did. I'm getting Planet of the Apes thoughts in my head,
But we could also, this might also factor into our universal conquest strategy. So it'd be great to have an army of human monkey hybrids, don't you think?
You should reach out to those scientists, Tom. I like the way you're thinking, man. That sounds great.
You could get some wings on those things. We could have flying monkeys. I think we'd be
wings, but they could ride on horseback. Yeah, sounds great. Yeah, love it.
Number 4 on the New Markets Newsmakers list.
Genius, Tom. Genius.
Please. I'm always thinking, Chris. Always thinking.
Number 4 on the list, we've got Abbott launched a AI-powered coronary imaging platform in Europe. It just got CE mark, and this platform's it's powered by their Ultron 1.0 software, and it's just like getting some AI to bear on actually enhancing visualization, detecting severity of calcium-based blockages that you might see in blood vessels. So just hopefully some new cool tech to help spot potential coronary problems.
If we could give the monkeys AI, we'd be in business as well. Wow. So this is great. There's a lot of great ideas.
Building up. I'm just feeding a lot of good stuff to you here.
And now it's time for our opening keynote conversation with Eric Honroth, the president of Getinge North America. Well, Eric Honroth, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Tom. Very much appreciate joining you.
So this is an interesting time for companies in the ventilator space. I mean, obviously here in the States, we saw our worst, I think, over the past 12 months. Hopefully we're tracking for better times, but obviously COVID's not done with us yet. So anytime there's new approval for ventilators and such, I think it's interesting news. But before we get into the news you've had regarding Servoair, we always like to find out a little bit about our guests and how they found their way into the medtech industry. So what was it that about the industry that attracted you?
So thank you, Tom. First of all, I have had a strong family history, whether former medical device and medical sales individuals, or in some cases physicians as well. So from an early age, graduating from college, I had an affinity to get into medical. And it was one of those that I just always was drawn to it. I think the opportunity to impact patients' lives and do so on a regular basis was always just something I found intriguing. Mm-hmm. And at this point, I've now spent close to 25 years in this space. So clearly I have enjoyed it, and it's something that I seem to have a strong affinity toward, and just want to continue on just because of the strong nature of what we're able to do and how we're able to impact patients' lives on a regular basis.
That's great. And was your interest on the clinical side, or has it always been on the business side?
A little bit of both. So I was pre-med to start, and then I decided that I didn't want to continue on and that long track record of additional schooling. Mm-hmm. But that clinical background always intrigued me, and I always found it something that I wanted to pursue. And then when I got to know a little bit more of the med device and the med tech space, I said, okay, listen, I can combine a strong tech affinity to something that will allow me to continue to be a business person, right? So that marriage, that combination, if you will, was something that was my calling, and I've once again just enjoyed being a part of it.
Well, now, actually, I would love to, if you would just take a moment to introduce our listeners and me to Getinge. I mean, I obviously know the company name. I've seen you around, but I can't say I've spoken to someone there before. I know I haven't for the podcast. I'm not sure if I have in my writing. I know it's over 100 years old. I know it's been doing med tech for a long time. But what do you tell people at events when you see them, if you stand 6 feet apart? What do you tell them about Getinge and what it does?
Absolutely. So, Tom, it's one of those companies that because we are an amalgamation of so many different acquisitions, people all know our products. They've used our products, are familiar with our products, and they've seen that these are definitely life-changing type of technologies. But a lot of times they don't know the Getinge name, right? And that's just a byproduct of a number of the acquisitions, whether that was McKay in certain situations, Atrium, things to that degree. So they are familiar with a number of Datascope, a number of the products that came from those acquisitions, but they don't always know Getinge. But Getinge, to your point, has got an over century of experience. They were founded in Getinge, Sweden. They have been listed on the NASDAQ Stockholm large cap since 1993. And we are, as I said, approaching 3 billion in US dollar sales. At this point, we're right around almost 30 billion SEK. So the conversion is close to 3 billion US dollars. We've got almost 11,000 employees worldwide, and we are headquartered in Gothenburg, Sweden. So I think, once again, Tom, people know us by our products, and they know us by a number of the companies that we acquired, but they still struggle at times pronouncing the name and still understanding exactly who we are. But I think you'll see a group that is committed to life-saving and game-changing type technologies, and in a number of different types of fields. So hopefully that's what people will start to remember us by.
Sure. And in full disclosure to the listeners, I did ask at this before we recorded how to pronounce Getinge. So and I think I got it right in the first tries. But looking at the map on your website, I mean, you're in China, North America, obviously, where you are the head, Brazil, and over Europe and a bit of the Middle East. So you're everywhere. How would we know you best? Let's speak about North America primarily. What are your principal businesses here?
Sure. So I think, Tom, what you'd understand us, most notably is the ventilation side, right?
Sure.
Because of the COVID pandemic, people became, front and center understanding just how absolutely important and critical ventilation was, especially high acuity ventilation, which is the area that we seem to excel at a dramatic pace. But you'll also see some very strong heart and lung machine technologies that are functioning in the ECLS space. You will also see us in different types of vascular and surgical open areas. In some cases, the endoscopic vessel harvesting, which is something used in CABG procedures, and to have a less invasive approach. So people will know us a lot from that as well. Also, Tom, I'd be remiss if I didn't tell you that, where we were founded, as I said, Getinge, Sweden, we do a lot of the sterilization equipment, a number of the lights, the tables, the booms, a number of things that are used within the SPD areas and the operating room areas as well. So we do have a large, extensive footprint in a number of different spots, as you can imagine. But as I said, probably the thing that most people would be drawn to because of the pandemic would be heart and lung machines, as well as ventilation, because those have been, thrust to the forefront for sure.
I think this is where we need to get into the past 12 months. So bring me back, if you would, to January of 2020, or whenever it was that it was becoming clear to you and Getinge that some challenges were coming.
Sure. So we embarked on 2020. I'm thinking, listen, we've had some very, good years thus far, and we continue to grow and be productive in this space. And so we were not expecting a pandemic, of course. And so that, some of our expectations and thoughts regarding what was going on in ventilation and other areas were reasonable. They were stretched, but we didn't obviously expect what we anticipated and happened, in the middle part of Q1. Mm-hmm. You can imagine, though, all of a sudden, as we started to better understand, COVID and some of course, the challenging situations when it came to respiratory care, we knew that we were going to be front and center involved in this. And so we had some initial announcements. So to give you perspective, in 2019, we manufactured 10,000 ventilators. That was these were high acuity, high tech ventilators that we provided. In early March of 2020, we said, listen, listen, we can probably produce about 60% more, so about 16,000 ventilators we'll be able to do in order to impact and try to help with the pandemic. Well, we knew that we needed to do more, right? Because at the time, I'm getting calls from a number of governors, not only in the Northeast, but across the US. I was getting phone calls in some cases from the White House and other areas looking to secure and procure ventilators for a myriad of different needs. And so we said, listen, now we are going to have to do more than 16,000. So at the end of the day, we produced 26,000 ventilators in 2020. That was a 160% increase. And once again, I will reinforce, and these are extremely complex pieces of equipment, right? These are not routine and simplistic type ventilators in some cases that you've heard about. These are high acuity ventilators that are absolutely designed for patients on COVID, right? I think that's the case. So we were rather excited about what we were able to do because we realized that, if a patient is going to be compromised and challenged, you better try to put them on one of our ventilators because, as I said, these are the type of technology designed to handle those challenging situations.
So how were you able to more than double your production? Was it a matter of turning internal dials only, or did you create partnerships with external partners?
Yes, so Tom, a combination of a number of factors. We utilized a number of supply chain areas in some cases with General Motors, Ford, Apple, amongst a number of other companies that were helpful and wanting to contribute. We figured, listen, some of those groups have robust supply chains. We realized that, trying to secure different types of components was not going to be easy. And so being able to assist and work with some of these companies, once again, that have a strong global outreach, absolutely paramount. We also realized, and we were going to have to run 3 shifts and pretty much run 3 shifts 24/7 in order to accomplish this and do this in times of the pandemic. But as I said, the group in Solna, Sweden, which is where these ventilators are manufactured, they really stepped up. They were able to produce a outstanding amount of ventilators in a short period of time. And as I said, I would be remiss if I didn't say that, some of these companies that also assisted and played an integral part, we couldn't have been more pleased, right? You saw a grouping of organizations come together looking to try to fight this pandemic and try to make sure that we could have as many high acuity ventilators out there to serve the market and the needs of the market.
And how are you viewing the demand for 2021? Are you going back down to 2019 levels, or are you managed to keeping things amped up?
Yeah, so Tom, I wish I had a crystal ball. That would be extremely helpful. But
sure.
Let me tell you what we've seen. So Q1 was a very strong quarter for us, and you can imagine whether they were certain states or certain countries or still much in the grips of COVID, right? And we've seen that. I have Canada and North America, which obviously continues to struggle, and there are parts of the world that also are having a unique and difficult and challenging situation right now. So we do expect that Q2 will also likely be high demand for ventilation and such. Now, what's going to happen in Q3 and Q4? Hopefully, as we see more of the world vaccinated and we see more states in the US vaccinated, we do think that we will get back down to more of the 2019 levels. But at this point, now we're just not sure, right? As I said, this unfortunately with this pandemic, we have seen it seems to continually rear its ugly head just when you think that you're out of the woods. And so I think all of us we have to remain vigilant. We have to remain, open-minded and try to trust that we're not sure what the market is fully going to look like. But I do think Q3 and Q4, we will likely see some more normal behavior like 2019, but not 100% sure at this point, as you can imagine.
Well, let's talk a bit about your news. You received US FDA clearance, 510K clearance for 3 products related to your servo ventilator platform. Take us through the 3 approvals.
Sure. So first and foremost, as you mentioned, we got 510K approval on the Servo U and the Servo N. So those are 2 of our mainstay ventilators that we are very, very excited about. And then also we've got the next generation of the Servo U MR ventilator. So it was one of those that gave us an opportunity to do a number of different things with software upgrades, as well as get into the MRI market with a product that we knew was going to be best in class and something that we were very excited about. So I'm happy to go into more detail on each of these, but that gives you kind of a quick update on what we received approval on.
Well, let's talk about first the the Servo U, and what is the difference between the Servo U and Servo N ventilator?
Sure. So really easy on that. So the Servo U is one that is our mainstay ventilator. That's the one that most of our patients will receive, specifically the COVID patients. And you can imagine the Servo N is the neonate ventilator.
Okay.
Again. So that is designed for neonatal use. So it is very similar to the Servo U, but as I said, it has functionality and components that are for a much more compromised group that you need to be that much more cognizant of. So that's the main differentiator between the U and the N.
So with the U, why you've said a few times that it's specifically made for, or at least it's the ventilator that someone with a serious case of COVID would be on. What is unique about the Servo U ventilator that makes it the perfect tool or therapy for someone suffering from serious case of COVID?
Sure. So I think that when you look at, the details on what we have on the ventilation side is that, we are a global leader in mechanical ventilation, and that is something that we have done, for a period of time. And so what we've done with that, and these ventilators are designed and tailored for the acute care segment, right? That is really, as I said, what is probably our strongest segment. We have a history of firsts when it comes to personalized ventilation treatment, and we are constantly looking to innovate our products and solutions to make sure that we enhance patient care when it comes to that. So I'd say that, what you'd see with any of the servos is that they take both the clinician as well as the patient's best needs at heart and look to try to design a ventilation opportunity that is going to benefit them. So they are extremely customizable, and they're able to handle a lot of the challenges that you would see in a COVID patient, right? It's not one of those ventilators that, as I said, is how do I put it? It's not easy to use, but when you have been trained on it and when you know the complexity and what it provides, it's able to take care of a number of the unique challenges that you see in a COVID type of environment.
And what is significant, or why is it significant that you have the ability now for a patient using or on the Servo U to undergo an MRI? Why is that so essential?
Sure. So that is an important area, and you can imagine. So it's one of those things that when we've got an MRI platform, you need to have a familiar interface. So something that you can imagine, and with a whole host of different ventilators out there, if a customer has a steep learning curve associated with it, that is difficult because it's going to require training and getting the staff up and running and getting them more comfortable and such in this. So a familiar interface, which is what the Servo MR is going to provide for them. It also supports all of the patient groups. So you're going to be able to take care of the Servo Ns and the Servo Us and the Servo Is because it is supporting all the patient groups. So that's extremely important. Finally, now what you're going to see is that it's got flexible positioning. So it can be placed on either side of the MR table. So it's going to be able to be positioned in the right area. It also has a magnetic field indicator, which shows safe distance to the scanner, as well as alerts you if it's too close. So it does provide a lot of functionality specifically designed for those MR procedures.
And so going forward, do you have any other approvals that you're waiting for in regarding to the ventilator business? Any other news that we should be anticipating later this year?
Tim, we do have a robust pipeline of different type of technology that we continue to move forward with. So I will say that we are not resting on our laurels and we're not done yet. So a number of things, hopefully, that you're going to continue to see. But this is an area that we believe wholeheartedly in. We think that, as I said, it's essential, specifically to our customers and our patients. So we suspect that we're going to see a lot more activity from Getinge moving forward, especially on the ventilation side.
Great. And finally, just two sort of culture questions. I'm just curious. Sweden, of course, took a different approach earlier in the pandemic as to how to manage the disease. I wondered, did your company's headquarters being in Sweden, did it create any sort of different messaging for company employees in different locations, or what was the company's broader response to the COVID pandemic?
Sure. So great question. Now, our main priority was to ensure that we help to save and improve as many lives as possible and also keep our employees and clinicians safe and healthy. I think that, that's our mantra. We have this passion for life promise that all Getinge employees are very familiar with. And, whether it was Sweden, whether it was other parts of Europe, whether it was North America, South America, Asia, I think all of us were trying to better understand and come to grips with what the pandemic actually was. So, each country and each state, if you will, in the U.S. had a different approach. And I think that we always took a pragmatic one and said, listen, safety first, try to do what is absolutely needed and essential for our clinicians and for our patients, and hopefully then we can produce those type of outcomes. So that was the case, but the Swedish roots are usually pragmatic roots, and they were trying to understand and of course try to do everything that we could, even though global demand for a number of our products was just absolutely phenomenal, as you can imagine. So I think that the Swedish roots, alongside with a number of other individuals in the company, hopefully we were able to make a dramatic impact and continue to do so.
And just final question, again, related to culture. Last month, you introduced a long-term flexible workplace approach.
Yes.
Again, as a result of more people working from home, it seems to work, and it sounds like it's something that you're going to keep in place for a time at least. What is bring us up to date on that, please?
Absolutely. And so we're excited about this one. This is one of the situations that we realized as a result of the pandemic that we could be equally as productive working remotely on a regular basis, right? I think there are still going to be certain functional areas that need to be in the office on a occasional basis, but a large portion of this company is going to be able to work remotely. So we have given most of our employees the opportunity to do so, and we are going to continue to do that. And we do feel like, similar to some of the large, tech companies that we've seen on the West Coast that have favored that approach, we're very similar, and we think that this is something that, as we move forward, this is going to be a competitive advantage. We think that people are going to be drawn to the culture of Getinge and realize that, listen, being able to work remotely, being able to work a little bit more safely, and in some cases having that flexibility, which I think all of us in North America definitely enjoy, is something that we want to be firmly ingrained in this culture. So I'm excited that the company has taken the lead, and I would once again equate us to a number of the larger tech companies that have also moved forward in that direction. And this is something here to stay for us. So we're excited, and we're looking forward to what this is going to do to our organization.
Excellent. Well, great conversation, Eric. Thank you for all the work you did during the pandemic and producing those important ventilators. And thanks for not yourself personally, of course, but Getinge. And thank you for joining us on the podcast today.
Absolutely, Tom. I really appreciate it, and thank you again.
Let us carry on. Chris Newmarker, what is number 3 on the Newmarker's Newsmakers?
Number 3 on the list, we have Stryker. They've made a kind of like a marketing partnership with minor league baseball. So they're going to be they're the official smart robotics joint replacement partner of minor league baseball. So I always find, it's I always find like here in the Twin Cities, we got the St. Paul State. It's great more affordable way to go and just watch some baseball. And
I'm a big fan.
Yeah, get
of
some
minor
junk
league
food.
baseball.
But there you go. So you could go and get your hot dog. Maybe they're roasting some s'mores over a fire in the back, and you can find out about a knee replacement. So
that's great. So are these for the old people like me attending the sports, or would they be providing these knee implants for the players who tend to be younger? I would hope
I think this is more of a they're really talking about that they're gonna, this seems more like marketing, like more for the fans, like they're gonna have like own the walk game day events. Fans at events get participate in activities around a Mako platform.
You're gonna have Makos on site, perhaps displaying the company's
That would
name.
be cool.
Wow. Oh, all right. Now it's
even
more reason to go to a minor league ball game. All right. Great job,
Check
Stryker.
out a Mako robot. Yeah.
Stryker and minor league baseball, 2 of my faves. So
but I mean, knee replacements don't go really well with 7-inning stretches, though, right? I mean, that wouldn't.
Nor do they go well with sitting in tiny seats for now. Although minor league ballparks tend to be more comfortable than Fenway Park.
But a Mako could give you better outcomes, maybe, and so that's why you should, appreciate it even more if you're finding out about it at a minor league baseball game.
There's lots of potential here. Total upside.
I love it.
All right.
Good.
Number
Good
two,
times.
number two on the list, Chris Newmarker.
Number two on the list, we've got Medtronic receiving an FDA breakthrough designation for their imprint ablation catheter kit. So the full story ran on our sister site, Medical Tubing and Extrusion. But this is basically like some advances for less invasive treatment and in treating lung malignancies. So, accuracy delivering microwave energy to targeted lung lesions, and it already has the kit already has a CE mark, but it's not yet available in the US, but, breakthrough device designation gives you all kinds of, fast track benefits with FDA and and as well as like reimbursement. You can like get some reimbursement like benefits with Medicare through getting that fast track that breakthrough nod from FDA. So yeah, some interesting news on the catheter delivered med tech front from Medtronic.
Excellent. Great news for Medtronic. Now let's bring it home. Chris Newmarker, what is number one on the Newsmakers list?
On the list, it involves DJO, which is part of Colfax. They've acquired a company called MedShape. And MedShape, they developed super elastic nickel titanium shape memory alloy, and they've got other shape memory polymer technologies. DJO, if people aren't aware, is like one of the largest orthopedic device companies in the world. So this is it looks like they're acquiring some neat materials technology that could help them do more innovation.
Someone recently did a huge spread on orthopedics companies, Chris. Who was that?
Oh yeah, that would be me.
Oh, that's right.
Yes. I'd encourage people, if you want to go to Medical Design Outsourcing Mass Device, you can check out our 10 largest orthopedic device companies in the world that I assembled. And yes, there's a whole thing about how DJO is doing and what they're about in there.
Great list. And I actually I've reached out, I think, to DJO to get CEO Brady Shirley on the show. So hopefully we'll hear back.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Get them on the program.
It's an interesting period because Colfax is, actually like splitting in half, and the ortho business is going to be standalone. So, that'll be, so it's some neat times over there. They're probably going to get more focused than if they're a standalone business.
Great job, Chris Newmarker. Now let's bring our closing keynote conversation. Again, I had a wonderful conversation with Dr. Nadine Hachach-Haram, the CEO of Proximie. Well, Dr. Nadine Hachach-Haram, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
Yeah, I've been hearing the Proximie story for a long time, and it's exciting to have you on here. You do excellent work in the promotional department. You're out there, not only partly, I'm sure, due to your hard work, but just the timeliness of the technology. We always start these interviews, though, just looking back a bit. How did you find your way into surgery? You're a surgeon. How did you decide to enter the medical field and become a surgeon?
So it's a great question. And, I'm sure, it's going to come across very unusual that a child at the age of 14 realized that they wanted to be a surgeon. But that's my story. From a young age, my family is originally from the Middle East. And so I spent a bit of time in my teens there. I was born in San Diego and then spent about 8 years in my kind of, teen years around the Middle East. And I'd seen some of the challenges around, inequity and access to healthcare. And I'd also seen some of the challenges post-conflict, and you see, unfortunately, the consequences or the sequelae of this of conflict. So I saw a lot of patients who had suffered blast injuries and burns injuries and others, and that really influenced me and influenced how I looked at my, what impact I wanted to make in the world. Mm-hmm. And it imprinted on me in that young age of, what did I want to do with my life? And I started to imagine this opportunity where I could be a reconstructive surgeon, so I could try and improve and restore form and function and give these individuals a better quality of life. And so that really took me on the path from a young age to become a reconstructive plastic surgeon. I kind of remember around that time, there was a good friend of ours of the family who was a surgeon in New York, and he used to come and do a lot of these, capacity building and mission type surgeries in the region. And he invited me to come spend the day with him. So I got the chance, I was 15 or 16 at the time, got the chance to go with him and spend the day seeing the work that he was doing. Mm-hmm. And I still remember coming home that day just so energized and telling my mother, this is exactly what I want to do with my life. So that was the path. And I've been a surgeon for 10 years plus now. And my main clinical practice has been around breast and pelvic cancer reconstruction.
That's fascinating, and it's interesting that your interest was in increasing access to healthcare by being a surgeon, and you've more than extended that and amplified that with the creation of Proximie. I want to get into the company in a moment, but I want to understand just a bit of the transition from your being a surgeon. I understand surgeons who create new medical devices. They're working on it. They can see something that can do something better. You are doing something similar, or you've done something similar, but through technology. Did you have a background in technology? Did you know, it wouldn't be impossible to create access to my surgical procedure for someone across the world? I mean, that would seem to be just a completely different discipline than reconstructive surgery.
Yeah, very different. And I'll probably kind of say two things around that. One is my dad was a computer engineer, and I was a gamer as a kid. So I was naturally drawn or comfortable, I guess, within that space. But more importantly, I think it comes from the why. What took me from being a surgeon to thinking about setting up Proximie? I spent about 10 years during my surgical career involved in any way possible to scale expertise. So on the one hand, I was involved in many global health initiatives, trying to look at building capacity and sustainability in surgical care around the world. And I also worked with many device companies. I used to be a KOL for about 3 or 4 companies, and I did a lot of the kind of product launch, translational work for them to try and accelerate, people using their devices and delivering that care to patients. Through that experience, I recognized that fundamentally we have this challenge in surgery. The operating room is undigitized, it's analog. The ability to scale new products and scale new techniques is very friction. It's slow, it takes time. And I started to think about this environment where operating rooms could be digital, could be connected, and could help us scale that. And I think it came on the back of my firsthand experience, having traveled so much with device companies, as well as my personal passion, which is around global health. It became clear that this was really a problem everywhere, not just somewhere. The ability to address variability, address access, and address scale at pace, at the rapid pace that we really needed to do it in healthcare, was not going to be possible to do it in any traditional model of care that we'd adopted in surgery over decades and centuries, which was this communication, collaboration, co-presence, that if we're together in a room, we can scale. And I knew that the exponential shift had to be delivered differently. And so how exciting could the intersection of innovation, technology, and healthcare be in that digital experience, and what could that do to allow me and many, many other surgeons and healthcare workers and surgical teams augment and accelerate their capability in helping others?
So how does that, how do you practically actually begin creating the project that leads to the founding of Proximie in 2016? Was that when you started, or 2015?
Yeah, 2016.
Yep.
I started to look at what are the core functionalities, because starting off by saying I'm going to build a connected digital operating room, it's a big ambition. And the challenge you need to think about is that, healthcare is complex. The operating room is complex in that it is a lot of stakeholders involved in that environment. And so to move from nothing, which is where we were, very analog and undigital, to a complete connected surgical care, which is the vision of Proximie, you needed to take a step-by-step approach. And that step-by-step sequential approach needed to think about what are some of the core components that we need today, and then how do we start to build value across that experience? And the immediate core component is, how can I connect with another clinician? How do I virtually transport myself so that I'm not having to jump on a plane every time I need to get somewhere to scale expertise, or hop in a car or a train to do that? And how do we make sure that experience is just beautiful? It is of the highest quality, and it is delivered for surgical experience. So building, and what we have at Proximie was, okay, we're going to build a highly optimized communication platform layered with augmented reality. Why? Because in order to be in that environment in surgery, it has to be immersive. It has to be ultra low latency. If you're sitting on a call and there's delay and lag, it doesn't give for that seamless experience. And the third thing is it had to be multidimensional. If I'm getting involved in a case and I can only see 1 or 2 views, it doesn't really give me the context of what's going on in that room. But if I'm able to bring together a single platform that gives me 3 to 4 views, ultra low latency with minimal bandwidth requirement, high quality user experience that's designed for that environment, then you're on a winner. You're already starting to win hearts and minds. You're building footprint. You're getting surgeons to use it and adopt it. Once you get to the point where you have believers in this future, surgeons using this technology, you can then start to really layer in the other features that we think are critical for that connected surgical care. But I can say, and I really want to kind of say this with my surgical hat on, is that it's about value. Mm-hmm. It's not about the novelty of a technology stack. I don't know at any point that we talk about what stack we used or what type of technology code was used. What we're talking about is how do we change the paradigm in surgery? How do we connect and accelerate skill acquisition and the delivery of care? And how do we make sure that patients get the best care the first time, every time?
No, understandable. I'm always just curious of how in the actual creation of the company and how you find the right partners to work with to help you develop the technology. Did you find a technology partner to work with initially to help you sort of craft out what needed to be done?
Yeah, I mean, the kind of interesting part of the story is I never really set out to start a company. When we started off, it was
everyone says it was that.
Really, they say that, I know, but it's true. The idea was in 2014, really, and it's kind of special because the anniversary of that specific day was a couple of days ago.
Great.
I actually have a picture from that day in the operating room. And I was just very frustrated, like, why can't I connect with others and do this differently? And I, strapped like an iPad to something with some tape. And I was like, we need to find a different way to do this. But in all honesty, I thought, look, I'm passionate about this. Let me see if I can, solve this problem. So found an outsourced group that I worked with, and they built a minimum viable product. And being a doctor and a scientist, I wanted evidence. Mm-hmm. So I deployed it in a couple of centers around the world where I had colleagues who were willing to test it out with me. So great surgeons at Riverside and Peru who worked together for cleft lip and palate surgery. We had surgeons in the Middle East. We had surgeons in parts of Vietnam. And for like 2 years, we were just testing and aggregating evidence about the value of this technology. It was incredible to see the skill acquisition that was happening, the pace. We were almost halving the time it would take to acquire skills and accelerating the ability to treat more patients because you have more capacity and skills to do it in a much more effective way. And it was only in 2016, so 2 years later, that CNN caught wind of what we were doing.
Oh, wow.
What I was doing, and published a small article that said, could this be the future of surgery? So it was April or May 2016. And at that point, what was my little secret now was kind of public. And so I sat down with the family and said, look, I think I'm going to start a company. I think we're going to do this at scale. So that was the birth of Proximie. Actually started a bit earlier, but officially, I guess, 2016.
That's amazing. Wow. That's for CNN to stumble upon what you're doing is
yes,
gratuitous for sure. So that's great. I want to understand. You gave a presentation, and we'll link to some of the TED Talks, but was eye-opening for me. I think this was in 2017, where we've been talking about technologies like yours in the context of COVID. It's woken up people like me to all these attempts to connect the operating room to people outside the operating rooms. But you were focusing on this in 2017, just the shortage of surgeons that's coming, and you gave some really eye-opening statistics. 5 billion people in the world lack safe surgical access. You mentioned Sierra Leone having 10 qualified surgeons, and even in the U.S., we need 100,000 surgeons in the U.S. by 2030 just to maintain our care. So this is a problem, I think, like with so many other things. COVID has merely shined a bright light on it and maybe accelerated its development. But talk a bit about the problem that we're facing in just ensuring that we have enough surgeons to treat the people, to provide the treatments that are necessary.
I think it's a really important point. And I think, what used to frustrate me was two things. One is that, it's incredible that and shocking that the number is just so big. Today that 2/3 of the world's population is lacking access to safe surgery. 18.6 million people are dying for lack of access to surgery, which is more than HIV, malaria, and TB combined. The other bit that is always kind of an eye-opening bit to me is this misconception that lack of access to surgery or variability to surgery is a problem of the global South or part of developing markets, or however people choose to describe it. I can tell you, having worked in the UK and having many colleagues who work in the US as well, variability in care and variability in access is a problem everywhere. Today in the UK, you're 14 times more likely to suffer complications following colon surgery between one hospital and another. Mm-hmm. And in the US, you're almost 3 times more likely to die from complications in surgery between the lower performing and the higher performing hospitals. This is all evidence that's out there. It's just not, we haven't shone a light on it, but it is an important piece. The second bit I would say is just the sheer volume of exciting and new products that are coming to market. If we look at the robotic space, the cardiac, interventional, there's just a huge plethora of new devices coming. How do we ensure that we're going to be able to scale the skill acquisition and the delivery of these products in a timely manner to patients that need it? I remember working with device companies. It would take months to get surgeons trained just with the logistics of trying to get them to places, to get the information to them, to be able to follow up and support them on their first few cases. It was all happening in this very disconnected way. Now, looking at these challenges, again, I would look at them in three buckets. One is lack of access. Two is we've got a lot of great centralized teaching hospitals and then a lot of peripheral centers that don't have all the expertise needed on those sites. And then three, just the amount of new devices and new products we need to learn about and accelerate. To solve that and to bridge that gap has to be digital. It has to be connected. It has to be a different way. And that's really the kind of the vision behind it. And it's always a great opportunity for me to share that because of that firsthand experience as a surgeon. And I've lived through all of those. I've seen it all. And that intimate knowledge of those challenges has really propelled the desire to try and solve this. And what I always say is that a siloed approach cannot solve a systems problem. And what we've seen historically is a lot of siloed point solutions trying to address this challenge. We need a connected solution, a connected platform that can bring together all the right technologies and solutions needed to connect the dots and make sure that we can deliver that and hopefully make a difference. I mean, 5 billion people, that has to change. We can't accept that anymore.
No, that's a great point. And you're right. We focus so much on innovation and creating new products, and we're the industry is developing these tools and trying to force them down a spigot that's getting narrower and narrower and narrower, as if we're losing the ability to the surgeons who can perform the care. And we're, to your point, we're also missing the bigger picture. All these people who aren't getting care at all. It's just an untapped market. So I'll ask one COVID question. What has the past year been like for you? Is it fair to say that it has really accelerated your development, really shown a bright light on the problem, or were you were on track anyway, and I and people like me finally caught up to CNN and became aware of what you were up to?
No, it's a great question. I mean, firstly, it's always really a privilege to have the opportunity to be a disruptor and a thought leader that's creating a new space. And looking back at 2014, 2015, 2016, building those ideas and pushing towards it in an environment that perhaps wasn't even thinking about it, let alone being receptive to it. You always think, at least from where I was sitting, it's like, I'm going to keep banging on about this because I know it's going to make a difference and we're going to be in this new world, in this digital world very soon. And, as we started to build out in 2016, 2017, my focus at the time was starting to build thought leadership, because it's really about winning hearts and minds, trying to change behavior in an environment that's been historically very traditional, surgery, and saying, look, we're going to do things very, very differently. It's hard. And so you need to build that thought leadership and try and get the buy-in for the value, for the value you're trying to bring. Now, when we started and really kind of launched commercially, which was in 2019, we were already starting to see an acceleration of adoption. So, quarter on quarter, we were doubling and we were seeing an excitement, enthusiasm. But I'd be lying if I sat here and said COVID didn't have a kind of an accelerant impact. I think what we would have seen happen over a 2 to 3 year period happened in about 2 to 3 months. And it accelerated the behavior change that was needed. And we saw it in our numbers. I mean, as I said, we were sort of doubling and kind of growing in a really consistent way. And just before COVID, our team was about 20 to 30 people globally. When COVID hit, we accelerated our users by 10 times, our footprint across hospitals from 30 to 300. And we went from 1,000 Proximie aided events to 10,000 Proximie aided events. So we saw across multiple endpoints an acceleration of adoption and usage. And, unfortunately, COVID has been a really difficult time for so many people and their families. And it's just been heartbreaking, having also spent some time on the front line myself, managing that, to see it firsthand. But definitely the silver lining in some of that, it has really accelerated the change that should be happening. And I'm excited to see where the future is going. I can tell you, we won't go back to the way things were. And we're definitely seeing that in the discussions we're having with our strategic partners, with our medical device partners, our big hospital partners, they're looking at this as the future. This is not just we're going to use it for a few months during COVID and then we'll stop. This is the future of how they want to shift their businesses and how they want to look to unlock value for themselves, but all their stakeholders as well, be it the surgeons, the hospital systems they work with, as do we.
Looking at your website, the groups you're collaborating with. I mean, you've got Cleveland Clinic, you've got Abbott, Medtronic, Stryker. I'm just watching it scroll through. Smith and Nephew. You've got all the big names. That growth that has happened over the past year, has it been primarily from, what percentage of that growth is the medical device companies connecting their sales professionals to the OR? Is that a business that you were counting on as well, or is that something that became a new business for you? And how big are you counting? How large a piece of that business will be of yours going forward? That came up badly, but you know what I'm trying to say.
Really important question. So first, what I would say is that surgery and the experience in an operating room is not a moment in time, and it's not a specific use case. Our vision of the use of Proximie encompasses all of the above. It's rep support, it's case coverage, it's education and training, it's accreditation, it's the continuum of a surgeon's experience. And so what we often describe as moving away from a see one, do one, teach one to prepare, perform, and perfect. Because throughout your career as a surgeon, you will go through that continuum of preparing either on a new technique or a new device. You will then want to perform your cases, and having some support, virtual proctor, virtual mentor, virtual coach is hugely valuable. But then being able to have a recording of that case in a HIPAA and GDPR compliant way, and then go back and review that, is hugely valuable. And so we have Proximie examples across those use cases. We've supported device companies to bring their reps digitally to operating rooms. We've supported surgeons in different hospitals and health systems to deliver care to patients. We've supported US health systems in accreditation around areas like robotic surgery and others. And we've supported the delivery of care in critical cases where there are a handful of experts around the world that need to come together to deliver that. And so I see it more as a continuum, but to kind of answer specifically, the med device business is a key part of our business. It was key before COVID and has undoubtedly accelerated and grown significantly since COVID, and is one that will continue to play a large role. Proximie is bringing value across their ecosystem, whether it's rep support, sales and marketing, R&D, and everything in between. So we see it as a key bit today, and it will continue to be a key part of the future of Proximie as well.
So let's two more future questions. The future of the need you're trying to fill. How do the next few years play out? I know you've got this mapped out. Are we going to see increased adoption of this type of connected technology? And what does that look like? There's so many groups out there. Some of the companies you're partnered with have their own digital surgery platforms. There's many other companies that are doing something similar to what you're doing, or at least presenting themselves that way. Can you all find a place in the health system? Is there going to be a thinning of the herd? And can hospitals and the healthcare infrastructure really support what you're trying to do, or are you sort of putting a digital Band-Aid on top of a gaping wound in healthcare?
I'll start by answering the last question and come backwards. I mean, that is the key bit. When Proximie has been designed by clinicians for clinicians, because we intimately understand the wound, the inside of the beast, with the challenges that are happening. It can be misperceived or misunderstood, when if a technology company is coming to try and solve a challenge, but they haven't spent time at the front line understanding all the complexity of it. And healthcare and surgery is complex with a lot of different stakeholders. And so Proximie's approach is definitely not to be that digital Band-Aid. And I think, from our point of view, and me, personally as a surgeon, I want to try and address that through a connected approach. As I said earlier, point solutions that on the outside appear like they are solving a system challenge traditionally fall short. Within 6 months, a year, 2 years, they fall short and they get parked to the side and people move on. We want to take a different approach. We want to work with systems, and we work with a number of hospital IDNs and health systems to think through how do we help with our technology and with our solution to continue to layer in solutions that are going to address those multiple challenges. And as I said earlier, what Proximie is really focused on is unlocking value for all those stakeholders, whether it's around in the moment connectivity, whether it's around quality and accreditation, whether it's around becoming more data driven and digitized in a sense that's going to enable us to understand our operating room, environment better and be more effective and more efficient around it. And so that is definitely the approach that we choose to take. And so I would say that we're just scratching the surface of the potential of where this real connected surgical care is going to be. And it's a continuum of that pre, intra, and post-op that you will see over time connected and digitized in one continuum. In terms of what we see in the landscape, I mean, I can tell you, having been a commissioner here on the Future of Surgery Commission, so we wrote a government asked white paper about what does the future of surgery look like. Mm-hmm. And that was an incredible piece of work because we spent about a year interviewing pretty much everyone in the industry, from strategics, device companies, clinicians, accrediting bodies, and others, to really understand how they perceive that environment. And within that was this concept that the future of the operating room will be digital. And so it's really about solutions that have the agility and the inclusivity that can scale. And Proximie today is a global platform. We can scale and be in hospitals within a matter of weeks. We are hardware agnostic, so we don't create that cumbersome real estate footprint that can often hinder the ability to scale. Mm-hmm. And we are adaptable to any device that hospitals and clinicians have. And those are purposeful design decisions that were taken in order to support that. And as we look at the ecosystem, I think this is a very, there are 330 million operations that happen every year. So it's a large and vast space. And from my point of view, it's exciting when other people are in the space as well, because it just reinforces and validates the importance and the value for these solutions. And I'm sure there'll be many interesting and future potential collaborations and companies working together to try and really combine forces and really address that gaping wound that you described.
Mm-hmm. Fascinating. So do you think we have the technology now to solve some of the problems you've laid out in the shortages we have, or do we need to bear down and develop this idea even further?
Absolutely. I mean, today, Proximie has published over 25 peer-reviewed journal articles that have demonstrated the value. We've demonstrated that Proximie can, double care provision in half the time, not compromise on quality. We've demonstrated that Proximie is equivalent to having an individual, an expert, or a rep in the room. We've demonstrated an acceleration of skill acquisition, mm-hmm. and also demonstrated for device companies the ability to accelerate their velocity by 50, 60%, because we're able to be more effective, more efficient, and augment their team's capacity. Rather than having to spend all their time traveling to different parts of the country, they can do a lot more from their own laptop. Mm-hmm. And so that is where the future is. And for me, it was very important to put evidence behind everything we do.
Great. And the final question, again, about the future, but about the future of Proximie. You raised a $38 million round just recently, I think just last month. We got a lot of names in there: F Prime, Questa, 8 Roads, Maverick Ventures. Some of them are sort of they're big investors. They kind of could be crossover investors. Is this before I ask my question, are you still practicing surgery, or are you a full-time CEO now?
I do. I still keep my hand in the clinical practice. I do a couple of days a month. And I think that is something I am excited and proud of, because it allows me to stay close to that intimate knowledge of that, that wound at the front line. And it enables me to really continue to get experiences and share knowledge with my colleagues and peers across the world.
And now my question is, so what do you want Proximie to be? Is this a company that you want to have it be larger? Do you want to take it public? Is there a SPAC offering in the future? What does Proximie's future look like in your mind?
I mean, where we stand, and as, looking back at even that moment in 2016, I want to build a big business that's making building legacy and impact. We want Proximie to be the solution that is digitizing and, in engaging every operating room and every cath lab and every, ambulatory daycare center anywhere in the world. And so we're on that, on a very big trajectory to try and achieve that. And we're definitely excited about numerous partnerships and collaborations that are going to help us get there.
Do you enjoy being a CEO?
I do very much. I enjoy building teams and building great culture. It's been super exciting at Proximie to grow from 30 to close to 100 people in less than a year. And what I really enjoy is just being able to harness fantastic talent, build a really positive culture of being able to build an exciting business commercially, but more importantly, being able to build a business that's actually going to impact Everyone, because Tom, I mean, everyone will have at some point in their lifetime a procedure. I think there was a study in the US that showed that in your lifetime, you'll have on average 9 procedures, however minor or major they may be. And so surgery affects all of us, affects us, our loved ones, our families, our colleagues. And so to have an opportunity to make an impact on as many people as possible is something we all strive for. And we really want to be that engine that connects the best of human expertise with the most advanced solutions and technologies to change lives.
That's great. I'm sure if everyone listening thinks about it, they probably already have a relative or themselves have had some anxiety about a surgery because of either the wait time or the lack of access or just general concern. So it's happening already. You're right. The future is now. So, well,
I'd love to share perhaps as an ending a story of a patient, because I always think it's always great to kind of bring it back home. And this was several years ago. This was at the start of Proximie. This was a patient who was in her late 50s, and unfortunately she'd suffered complications following a laparotomy for many years, and she was in the early stages in intensive care. She almost died once or twice and was fed by tubes and really had a couple of years of really difficult life. Eventually, when everything settled, she was left with a pretty awful abdominal wall hernia, which means every time she stood up or coughed or moved, this big bulge would erupt. And to the point that she was desperate and said, I don't want to live like this. This is not the way, I envisaged the best years of my life. So she reached out and said, look, I want to stay local with my surgeon. I trust him. I'm comfortable with him. I want to stay close to my support network. But I know that there's an expert in this country that could really help my surgeon and deliver the care that is needed. And so we reached out, we obliged, we used Proximie to enable these surgeons to work together. And this patient went home at day 5. And by the summer was in a swimsuit with her grandkids and living her best life. And that patient is my mother.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So I think, as they say here in England, the proof is in the pudding. And I really, truly believe that, and I hope that what the story really demonstrates is my true belief in the potential of these solutions and these technologies and the opportunity it can have to give patients a real quality of life that may not have been afforded to them in any other circumstance.
It's amazing. And it must be so meaningful to you to have provided that to your mom. Just nothing, no other reason to start a business than that. So that's a wonderful story. Thank you for sharing it.
No, thank you.
Nadine, it was a real pleasure to talk to you. Thank you for joining us on the podcast.
Thank you, Tom. It was a real pleasure talking to you too.
All right, Chris Newmarker, we're wrapping up this much shorter than 4 hours and 3-minute episode of the Device Talks Weekly podcast. Now is the time to do what, Chris?
Now is the time to tell everybody we got social, we're on social media, you can like, follow, subscribe, but you can find me on LinkedIn, Chris Newmarker, just like a Newmarker, on Twitter @Newmarker. Always happy to, hear some new ideas, get feedback. Will be awesome. And I am on Twitter as well, @MedTechTom. You can find me on LinkedIn as well, Tom Salemi. I am also on the Clubhouse, but we won't get into that right now. But keep your eye out. We'll hope to get back on there soon once Chris is done with this Pharma 50 project. And that's it. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of the Device Talks Weekly podcast. If you like what you hear, please share it. Tell your friends, your colleagues. Follow us on all social media platforms. You can find Mass Device there. You can find Device Talks there. You can find Medical Design and Outsourcing there. We'd love to have you as part of our journey. And please don't forget to subscribe to this podcast and to the Medtronic Talks podcast as well. We launched that last week. We've got a great episode coming up this week or this coming Wednesday. It'll be on surgical robotics, so you don't want to miss that. So subscribe, and you'll be swimming in fascinating med tech conversation. So that's it, folks. Tune in next week. We'll have another great episode of the Device Talks Weekly podcast waiting for you. Take care. Get vaccinated soon.